back on the Morgan Streetman Show. We get to go out there a little bit into a couple of my favorite topics. Robots.
Yeah, robots. I mean, we haven't talked robots in a while, but, they haven't stopped working on them.
No.
In the meantime. They've been steady working away. And can you even imagine the kind of advances they can make with the quantum computers, things like what Byron was telling us about that they have in China? It's going to be unfathomable. But before we get to that topic, we first have to understand the people that are running these companies are tech overlords and why they might actually fall into a separate class of people.
If you're trying to understand tech overlords and think to yourself, well, they're philanthropic, they've got to have our best interests at heart, you need to dig a little bit deeper to sort of understand their personality type and know that it doesn't line up with any normal person. I say normal person who doesn't have billions of dollars. So this is what they found in this study. It was done by researchers in the United States and in Germany. And they say that big tech elites, we're talking about people like Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, they display a meritocratic worldview.
Mm-hmm.
So a world based on merit on the surface, meaning they don't see their own wealth as the source of their influence or success, which is not true.
Of course not. Yeah.
Right?
Just because they're good people.
Rather, they believe their innate abilities and their altruistic beliefs have enabled them to achieve power.
Yeah.
So this is what they tell themselves, and that gives them this layer of narcissism to believe that their goals and vision for the world, which they believe they are ruling, is good for you and I.
Yeah. Well, and we see that. We see the wholesale pushing ahead with their technologies, the rollouts. It comes into play like we were talking about on YouTube and other places, Facebook, Twitter, the control of the conversation, banning people on social media. If they say something or post something that they don't like, putting a little disclaimer underneath it, say essentially what this person said is not true. Official sources have stated the following. And, and that goes across the board. We've seen that on stuff having to do with the election. We've seen it on people's thoughts, people's statements having to do with the coronavirus and other topics. And, yet as time goes on, as the truth comes out, we start to see that the people who were called crazy by the tech overlords, the narcissistic rulers that we now have, who in their own minds can do no wrong, they're wrong. They're actually wrong. And we see that. I mean, we saw it recently with the coronavirus issue, something that we here on this show, and we weren't the only ones by far, but we here on this show called that pretty early on. We said you need to look at that Wuhan Institute of Virology because something's going on there. Forget about that seafood market, the wet market. Look at the virology lab. Look at the level 4 biosafety lab in that city where the outbreak occurred. And, of course, as people have looked into that, we've gotten more and more detail on that particular story. There was a great segment on Steve Hilton's show last night called The Next Revolution with Steve Hilton, where he went into the origins of the coronavirus and it most likely being from the gain of function research that was funded by our own National Institutes for Allergy and Infectious Diseases and one Dr. Anthony Fauci. We got another call. Let's have our caller.
Hello, Hunter. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are y'all?
Great, Hunter. What's on your mind today?
Well, this plays into exactly what you're talking about with the tech.
Yeah.
During my time working from home, Morgan, I'm a trial attorney, and we've been homebound doing everything by Zoom. I happened to turn on the hearings in front of Congress. I can't remember the exact month. I think it was August or so. It was Amazon, Twitter, Apple, and Facebook.
Uh-huh.
The CEOs of all four came on. And I don't know if any of you caught this. I actually sat there, got in kind of a habit of watching some of these congressional hearings because I got tired of hearing CNN and whoever and Fox delineate what they thought was said versus just hearing it said.
Right.
And I do believe the Google CEO, he looks like a Bond villain and needs a white cat. But I will say this. It was a bipartisan effort by both Dems and Republicans, and they had huge binders. I think all four of these CEOs, it was Bezos, the guy from Facebook, Twitter,
right?
Zuckerberg. Yeah, they were all sitting up there. I think they thought they were going to get a bunch of softball questions about how great how much good they've done in the world.
Right.
But these congressmen and their staff were ready with binders full of things to criticize and bring up. For instance, Amazon, there's a thing called diapers.com that came up. Somehow their business model evaporated, and lo and behold, Amazon came up with their own diapers.com concept. And they're asking Bezos, hey, do you know anything about this? Of course, these guys can all deny because they're not in the day-to-day work. But after this, I was really proud of the Congress because it was a bipartisan, basically overhaul and discussion of the power and what these people have. I don't know what happened, and I'll throw this out to you guys. I never heard anything later about antitrust laws or anything brought in to tamp down their power.
Right.
And what I noticed is a high percentage of money, the lobbyists on K Street, was shot into Congress by Facebook. I know it was mentioned that Facebook and Apple, I'm sure Amazon too, and Twitter, have dumped a lot of money. So it seems like all of those objections have now been quieted down. What do you guys know about this?
Well, that falls into the category of don't bite the hand that feeds you, right? And what do we see from Congress? I mean, it's great when they hold these hearings and issues are exposed. We've just been through years of this going on, issues being exposed, people promising to get to the bottom of something and do something about it. But, by the time they actually get around to trying to do something about it, they're rotating off of the Judiciary Committee, or their term as the chairman of that committee is up. I'm thinking of Lindsey Graham as one example of somebody who was always just about to issue subpoenas, just about to get to the bottom of something. But even when they have these hearings, they never actually do anything about it. And so are we watching them pacify us by, it looks like they're going to do something. They expose the issues, as you've pointed out, but when push comes to shove, they don't pass any legislation. They haven't repealed Section 230, which President Trump wanted to do. He wanted that to be part of the National Defense Authorization Act that was just passed last year at the end of the year, like they do every 2 years. And remember that Congress would have nothing of that. Now, Section 230 is what protects the ISPs, the internet publishers, essentially, from any liability for what they put up and what they publish, because they're just supposed to be like the community bulletin board where you can post anything that you want. But instead, what we see today is they're actually curating the content. They're actually preventing certain types of people, certain thought processes from being posted, at least without getting some kind of a disclaimer on it. And that's the brave new world we're in. Folks, thanks for joining us. I'm Morgan Streetman, and that's the way I see it. Thank you for listening to the Morgan Streetman Show. We hope you enjoyed what you heard, and if you did, please click like and subscribe to help us out. And remember that we recommend that you exercise your brain at least once a week.